In July of 1518, the city of Strasbourg, then part of the Holy Roman Empire, witnessed one of the strangest events in recorded history. It didn't begin with a festival, a fair, or music in a town square. It began with a single woman stepping into the street. Her name was Frau Troffea, and for reasons no one fully understood, she started to dance. The first dancer, it wasn't a graceful waltz or a joyous jig. Witnesses said she moved with jerky, restless energy, as if compelled by something beyond her control. Hours passed, then days. She kept dancing. She collapsed from exhaustion, but when she woke, she got back up and danced again. Neighbors stared in disbelief. Some tried to help her, thinking she was possessed. Others simply watched, horrified and fascinated. Within a week, 30 more people had joined her. The outbreak spreads by the end of the month. More than 400 people were dancing uncontrollably in the streets of Strasbourg. They weren't celebrating. They weren't enjoying themselves. Many wept as they moved. Their feet bled. Their bodies shook. Some prayed for it to stop, but still they danced. The city's narrow streets turned into makeshift dance floors, filled with exhausted, half-delirious citizens unable to control their own movements. The authorities intervened. The city council, desperate to restore order, turned to the medical wisdom of the day. Physicians insisted it wasn't demonic possession, as many thought, but a natural illness, a condition of hot blood that needed to be cured. And the cure? More dancing. The council ordered the construction of wooden stages and hire musicians to keep the dancers moving. The idea was simple. Let them dance the sickness out of their bodies. It was, of course, a disaster. The dance of death, with drums beating and fiddles playing, the mania only grew. Hundreds now staggered and spun across Strasbourg, driven by an invisible force. People collapsed from exhaustion, then rose again to continue. Some reportedly died of strokes or heart failure, their bodies unable to withstand the endless motion. What began with one woman had become a citywide nightmare, a dance no one wanted and no one could stop. Closing of Section 1. So here's where Strasbourg stood in the summer of 1518, a city in crisis, racked by famine and disease. A woman who couldn't stop moving. Hundreds of neighbors swept into the same frenzy, and local leaders who thought the solution was to hire musicians, only making things worse. It was one of the strangest public health disasters of the Middle Ages, a spectacle of misery and motion. And in Section 2, we'll explore the possible causes, from poisoned bread to mass hysteria, from spiritual terror to psychological stress. Because the dancing plague of 1518 wasn't just a mystery, it was a tragedy that blurred the line between body and mind, faith and fear, until people literally danced themselves to death. The summer of 1518 turned Strasbourg into a city possessed. By August, hundreds of citizens were still dancing uncontrollably in the streets. Some collapsed and never rose again. Others staggered until their bodies simply gave out. The plague was no metaphor, it was deadly. But what caused it? Why would entire crowds move as if their bodies no longer belonged to them? The truth is, no one knows for certain. But the theories are as strange as the event itself. The death toll, eyewitnesses claimed dozens, perhaps even hundreds, died. Many succumbed to exhaustion, strokes, or heart failure. Their bodies were carried away, while others continued to dance around them, unable to stop. There was no cure, no end in sight. The very measures meant to help, musicians, stages, and halls, only fueled the mania. Finally, when the city realized music was making things worse, they reversed course. The dancers were taken to shrines and chapels, where priests prayed and offered healing rituals. Slowly, the plague faded, but its memory never did. The theories of the time, to contemporaries, there were only two possible explanations: divine punishment, a judgment from God, or the saints for sins. Some believed St. Vitus, a patron saint of dancers, had cursed the city. Medical imbalance. Physicians thought it was hot blood, a condition that made people restless and feverish. Their solution, more dancing, nearly killed the city. Neither explanation brought much comfort. Modern theories, historians, and scientists have wrestled with the case for centuries. Ergot poisoning. One idea is that the dancers ate rye bread contaminated with ergot fungus, the same fungus that produces LSD-like compounds. Ergotism can cause hallucinations, convulsions, and spasms. But critics note it usually makes people violently ill, not dance in rhythm for weeks. Mass hysteria, psychogenic illness. Another leading theory is that the plague was psychological. Strasbourg in 1518 was racked by famine, disease, and despair. Under such stress, mass hysteria can manifest in physical symptoms. The sight of one person dancing uncontrollably could have triggered others to fall into the same trance-like state. Religious ritual gone wrong. Some suggest it began as a ritual or penitential act, dancing to appease saints or ward off disaster, but spiraled into uncontrollable mania. Why dancing? But why dancing specifically? In medieval Europe, dancing was sometimes linked with spiritual frenzy, a way to purge sin or connect with the divine. There were even earlier reports of dancing manias in Germany and the Low Countries, often tied to cult-like devotion to St. Vitus. So when Frau Troffea stepped into the street, it may not have seemed entirely strange at first. But when it spread beyond a handful to hundreds, the city knew it had become something else entirely, something terrifying. The legacy of the dancing plague. The event became legendary. Chroniclers recorded it with horror and fascination. Pamphlets spread the tale, turning Strasbourg's misery into a cautionary story across Europe. And it has remained one of the great medical and historical mysteries. Was it poison bread? Religious mania? Psychological stress exploding into physical movement? Or some strange mix of all three? What we know is this. For weeks in 1518, Strasbourg was trapped in a nightmare where music wasn't required and dancing meant death. The absurdity and the tragedy. The image is almost comical. Hundreds of people moving in rhythm, sweating, stumbling, collapsing, only to rise again. It sounds like carnival gone mad. But behind the absurdity was real suffering. People died in agony, unable to stop their own bodies. Families watched helplessly as loved ones danced themselves into the grave. It was a plague with no cure, no clear cause, and no prevention. Closing of Section 2. So here's the tally. One woman's strange dancing turned into an epidemic of motion. Hundreds joined, some collapsing, some dying, while others looked on in terror. Theories stretched from saints and demons to fungus and hysteria. And a city learned that sometimes the deadliest plagues are not the ones that rot the flesh, but the ones that hijack the mind. The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of the strangest chapters in history, a time when the people of Strasbourg were forced to keep moving, long after their bodies begged to stop. It was the dance no one wanted, and the dance that only ended with death.